Did you take Christina Parcell's life?
Yes. Those rose petals had a dual purpose. Sadistic, artistic sign that he thought was necessary.
I knew from that moment on it would be safe.
I think a lot of it was a bunch of self-serving, narcissistic junk.
As to the charge of murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
Where was the emotion? There was little doubt about the verdict, but how did Zachary Hughes think that the jury would see him as a hero? We're diving into the mind of a killer and breaking down what the crime scene reveals. Plus, the Menendez brothers are opening up about being brutally bullied in prison. Shocker. Their new interview is what's trending in true crime. Plus, the DNA stays in the case of Bryan Kohberger. A crime scene reconstruction expert joins us live to talk about the dueling theories that may come into his murder trial. Also this hour, we're being a voice for victims in the murder of a beautiful Georgia teenager named Mia Campos. Her family is joining us live to talk about the brand new sex charges that have been brought against the man accused of murdering their daughter. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Friday morning to you, my friends. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. We've got a tremendous show planned for you, so let's get right to it. Grab that cup of coffee like you always do. It's time for my opening statement. Bye-bye, Piano Man. And I'm not talking about Billy Joel. Billy Joel is a legend. Love Billy Joel. I'm talking about the pianist who's a legend in his own mind. Convicted killer Zachary Hughes. Congratulations, you self-righteous snob. You've been awarded a one-way ticket to prison. You were so arrogant, you thought you should get away with murder. No, sir. In the United States of America, it doesn't work that way. You don't get to commit murder because you don't agree with what another person is doing. And let me be clear, I am by no means defending Bradley Post or Christina Parcell. If they sexually exploited that child, they should be locked up for the rest of their lives. With her, I know it's an impossibility, but you know what I mean. Two wrongs don't make a right. If Hughes really believed that that child needed to be rescued, he should have called the police. He should have called the FBI. He should have called Child Protective Services, and the list goes on and on. He should have called somebody whose job it is to investigate and properly deal with these matters. Instead, Mr. Hughes deprived that child of her mother and her father too, because he snitched on him. An arrogant snitch he is. And now he can go be arrogant in prison. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it right now. It's time for your daily docket.
Not only was the defendant having an affair with Baker, but they were also swinging with other people. Her older daughter, Jessica, who you'll hear from, found Baker sleeping in the defendant's bed.
In California, testimony resumes in the celebrity hairstylist murder trial for Monica Cementilli. That starts up at noon today. In Utah, we've got defendant Corey Richens. She's got a hearing about juror questionnaires for her homicide trial pertaining to her husband Eric's death. Court starts up there at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We will be there. And in Kentucky, the sentencing for Carol Hignite. Remember her? That begins this morning at 8:30 a.m. She was found guilty of murdering her husband Leon at her retrial earlier this year. Now, my friends, let's turn to our top story. Defendant Zachary Hughes waking up behind bars this morning after he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Christina Parcell. Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft reports.
Good morning, Julie. They call it the trial of the century here in Greenville, South Carolina. But now this rose petal murder trial has come to a close nearly 3 years after the murder of Christina Parcell. A jury of 6 men and 6 women found Zachary Hughes guilty of murder.
As to the charge of murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
No reaction from Zachary Hughes when that verdict was read. The judge had made it clear that he does not want any emotional outbursts in the courtroom. Your reaction first to the guilty verdict on that top charge of murder.
We're certainly satisfied, and when the state gets a life sentence on somebody who's committed a heinous crime, it's not a win. Everybody lost in that courtroom today. The Hughes family lost, Zach Hughes lost, and Tina Parcell certainly has lost. So it's not a win, but is an appropriate sentence under these circumstances.
Defense counsel plans to appeal. In Greenville, South Carolina, Kelly Craft. Julie, back to you.
Our thanks to Kelly Craft for that report, and we're not done talking about this case. This guy, what kind of a killer are we dealing with here, and what was up with that crime scene? Let me bring in our expert guest I'm so excited to have on the show, clinical psychologist and expert in narcissistic abuse, Dr. Jamie Zuckerman, and crime scene reconstruction expert, the star witness in the Alec Murdaugh trial. He's got his own business now, Dr. Kenny Kinsey and Associates. Dr. Kenny Kinsey, good morning to you both. Let's start with this guy. I can't get over his arrogance. Dr. Jamie, how I wish you could personally evaluate him for us. But since you can't, share your expertise on what you think may be going on with Mr. Hughes.
Yeah, he is extreme, at least came off extremely entitled. He really hid behind his religious values, which we see often in narcissists. He is extremely, we'll say, he pretends to be protected by these values that he has, that he uses, in my opinion, as a mask to engage in these very entitled, very dangerous behaviors.
Right, Dr. Jamie. Yeah, it's like a mask, and the emotion just wasn't there. What does that say to you, that this guy just said it so matter-of-factly, and it gave me the creeps.
Yes, this one made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I'm not going to lie. It's that lack of empathy that we get those chills from, that just absolute lack of empathy, lack of remorse, absolutely no concern for the fact that he has taken away a child's mother, that he himself has decided that he and only he is able to do that. And, that sense of entitlement and that just absolute lack of concern for the consequences of his actions was just so apparent in this.
Dr. Jamie, thank you for that. Dr. Kenny Kinsey, I want to go to you next, please, and start with a clip that I thought was brilliant from the state in close, talking about the rose petals. Let's take a look.
Those rose petals had a dual purpose. He may have used them as a ruse to get in and get inside the house so he could surprise Christina and gain that strategic advantage to murder her. But he also sprinkled them around. He sprinkled them around the house, on her purse, around, as some sort of sadistic, artistic sign that he thought was necessary.
Dr. Kinsey, want to ask you, please, your thoughts on the rose petals and also just the way in which this was carried out and the scene left behind. Your analysis, please.
Thank you, Miss Julie. Very brutal. Anytime you're dealing with an edged weapon, and I think up to 30 stab wounds, you're talking about a lot of evidence left. Solicitor Wilkins, hats off to him, and Sheriff Lewis. I like the fact that the investigation did not end with court. And I've been on both sides in Greenville. They're tenacious advocates for their victims. We're talking about someone, and I don't delve into the psychology thing like our co-doctor here, but there's a lot of thought put into this, and their crime scene examiners and their investigators do their homework every time. And hats off to Sheriff Lewis and Solicitor Walt for the job they did. And I'm very impressed that they continue even making additional charges up to the point to where Zach was on the stand and confessed to this. I think it's a brilliant talent that is wasted. It's just a wasted talent.
So well said, Dr. Kinsey. Thank you for that. Dr. Jamie Zuckerman, I want to go back to you here, please. With the hope this defendant seemed to have had in painting himself as a hero, thinking he would get some jury nullification and get to go back to his piano. I've got a clip for you. Let's watch.
Before I left, when I realized that I had probably left my DNA there, despite my effort not to, I prayed again and just said that I believe that what I've done is the right thing, and I believe that I did it for the right reason.
Oh, yes, he definitely left his DNA underneath her fingernails when she was fighting him off. Dr. Jamie, what do you think when he says he believes he did it for the right reason?
Again, I go back to it's extremely entitled. And I think it's a mask, again, that he uses to hide behind his behavior. The fact that he thought this out and planned it as much as he did, the fact that he throws religion into this, and also the way he articulated at one point that he felt so, on one hand, human and guilty, and then on the other hand, knew he needed to do this. But yet, if you listen to him when he's on the stand, where he really focuses are the aspects of when he thought he was going to get caught. That's when he prayed. To me, that just right there screams he had every intention of harming her. And by no means do I think that he thinks, here, let me back up. I think he thinks that he can convince us that he did it for the right reasons. But I don't think he thinks he did it for the right reasons.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, this guy thought he was smarter than the jury. And I love that this jury didn't buy it. I love that they followed the law. Good citizens, great jurors they are. Dr. Kinsey, let's just say for the sake of our analysis, they hadn't, right? You've seen a lot of very dangerous people throughout your years of service. We thank you for your many, many years serving in law enforcement. Tell me, if Mr. Hughes would have gone out, would you have viewed him as a dangerous person who could potentially kill again?
Certainly. As Dr. Jamie mentioned, the mindset and going immediately to God because he was scared he left evidence. He thinks, and we see this many times, Miss Julie, he thinks he is smarter. As you brilliantly mentioned, he's smarter than the jury. But you're going to have a tough time finding a smarter jury than that part of South Carolina, Greenville. Like I said, they put their time in, been on both sides of the coin in that same courtroom. It can be tough there, but they were smarter than the pianist this time. And I don't believe any time a person gets on the stand and admits to something in the name of vigilante justice, I don't believe it works very often.
Mm-hmm. Right, Dr. Kinney. You know, this guy, he gave me the creeps. I felt put off by him. If I kept trying to put myself in the shoes of a juror, I wouldn't have liked him. I would have been like, ugh, I feel like he's talking down to me. That was kind of what I got from him. I felt like he came off as a snob, as Dr. Jamie put it so well, very entitled, and just the self-righteousness. Dr. Jamie, would it be fair to say, I'm so curious, and by the way, side note, for anybody who wants help with narcissistic abuse, call Dr. Jamie Zuckerman. I love watching your videos. It's tremendous the way you explain things. Is this guy a narcissist, perhaps?
Without having evaluated him, by the impression he gave me, I too, Julie, had a really difficult time watching him. I had to take many breaks because he really just didn't sit well with me. I would say that he would be more likely than not, if I had to guess, in that category of a narcissist, sociopath. Again, just because of his strong sense of, you know, what I do is right, and this kind of holier than now, and I am talking that, and you're absolutely right, that feeling of being spoken down to, the lack of empathy, the very, I would imagine that if somebody were to critique him or criticize him, it would not be met with any type of willingness to receive that. So yeah, I would think that by the way he talks about himself in relation to others, that he would probably possibly fall into that category, yes.
I'm so curious. Dr. Jamie, thank you for that. You know, maybe somebody will bring him some roses in prison where he'll be for the rest of his life. Now, Dr. Kenny Kinsey, Dr. Jamie Zuckerman, I'm so glad we have you both on the show. You're staying with us for more segments and questions. Go refill that coffee. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, here's what's coming up on Opening Statements.
Can you answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, was you telling Lyle what?
My dad had been molesting me. There was no reason to lie. Clearly, he was coming to me, wanted me to do something about it.
Well, these two, the Menendez brothers, are back in the headlines. They're opening up about their trauma behind bars. We'll talk about it. Plus, brand new charges added for Mia Campos' alleged killer. That's right, and her family is joining us live in the studio this morning to talk about the latest developments.
Widow or mastermind behind a murder.
Monica Cimentelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Famed celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cimentelli.
Prosecutors say she and her lover killed Fabio to collect a big life insurance policy.
The defense may say she's a bad woman, but she wouldn't be involved in a murder.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story, but will there be a twist that no one sees?
The celebrity stylist murder trial, today, only on Court TV.
Now for what's trending in true crime, the Menendez brothers are back in the headlines as they're opening up from behind bars. That's right. In a phone interview with TMZ's podcast, Two Angry Men, Eric Menendez spoke about some of the trauma that he and his brother Lyle have faced while in prison for the past 35 years.
I was picked on, bullied violently, and it was traumatic. And it was continual. And, you know, those are things that a lot of inmates in prison go through. And when they're not part of a gang structure and they come in and they're basically lone wolf, you know, they just have to be by themselves. And so it added a great deal. Prison can be hard, and there's a lot of suffering in prison.
The podcast is hosted by TMZ's Harvey Levin and the brothers' attorney, Mark Garagos. So this morning we're asking the question, are the Menendez brothers sharing these stories for sympathy? We know they've got a huge push coming up to get out of prison. So what's the motivation behind doing the podcast? Hit us up with your thoughts on social media, and let's bring in our guests now. I want to welcome into the conversation criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Joe Tamburino, and still with us, clinical psychologist and narcissistic abuse expert Dr. Jamie Zuckerman. Dr. Jamie, let me start with you, please. Do you think this is a ploy for sympathy?
Possibly. I do think that they're being honest about it. I do think that they've probably experienced some things we can't fathom. But yeah, it could possibly be, given what's approaching.
Sure. Joe Tamburino, you know every legal move matters as they're coming up on the big day just weeks ahead where they're going to be going before the court and pushing for a recommendation from the district attorney's office for release. Tell me, what do you think could be the motivator behind this?
It's 100% a ploy to try to get out front and say, look, they've been abused enough. Not only do we, according to the defense, have new evidence of this letter, that, the judge in the second trial didn't allow all of the evidence in of sexual abuse, though he did allow quite a bit, and the jury just didn't buy it. But now they're saying, in the 30-plus years they've been in prison, they've been bullied, beaten up. I think one of them had their jaw broken at some point. So absolutely, this is not just serendipitous. This is part of a plan to get some sympathy for these guys when they try to get resentenced or released.
Joe, great points. Dr. Jamie, I want to go back to you and pick your brain about whether you think, in general, not just with this podcast, in general, are these guys manipulative?
They had been through so much trauma and so much abuse that I do believe that in their minds they felt they did what was necessary to survive. I do believe that. I don't believe them to be manipulative in their podcast, in any of the interviews that I've seen. I think they have been through things that we cannot fathom, and what that does to somebody as a child all the way into their late teens, early adulthood, is absolutely damaging. Do I think that they're going to need, and I've said this before, do I think they're going to continue to need support and therapy, all throughout their lives? Absolutely. Do I think that they're being manipulative in their approach, just and how they've spoken to interviewers, how they've spoken to people during their incarceration? No, I don't. I think that they've been through hell and back. I really do.
Dr. Jamie, thank you for that. Let's look at the idea that they could possibly be freed. So they've been incarcerated for 35 years. We know that they were supposed to have gone before the court already, but because of the terrible California wildfires, the DA's office made a smart move in postponing that case. Everybody agreed it needs to be postponed for more pressing matters to go in front of it. On March 20th and 21st, that is when they're going to be in court trying to ask the DA to recommend to the judge release. There's no guarantee the judge will order a resentencing for them. No guarantee for that, but it starts with, could the DA possibly do something to help them? That would be the first step. Lyle spoke about how the two of them are feeling about their future on the podcast. Let's take a listen.
My brother and I are cautiously hopeful, and we're just, we're in prayer with our family, and we're hopeful, and we're just trying not to go a little crazy in the interim, like you said.
Again, that's the TMZ podcast, Two Angry Men, hosted by Harvey Levin and Mark Garagos, who represents the Menendez brothers. So what are the chances they get released? The million-dollar question. Joe Tamburino, your thoughts on this, please.
Highly unlikely they get released. I mean, think of it this way. They're saying that we have new evidence, that there's this letter that says, well, it substantiates that they were physically and sexually abused by their father. And supposedly this letter was written 8 months before the murders happened. It's never been brought up before. We've never actually had any experts say that the letter was written 8 months before the murder. So it's a little tenuous as to the argument that this is really the smoking gun that will get them free. And they're saying that, well, in the second trial, the Judge Weisberg at the time, he really didn't let a lot of evidence in about the sexual assault. And that's a little bit misleading, because in the second trial, Judge Weisberg sure did allow the defense to talk about the sex assaults. He allowed them to get on the stand, talk about it. The thing he limited was the Menendez brothers wanted to get in some other stories, other tales of abuse from when they were quite younger than in their teens. And the judge said that basically is too far afield. So the Menendez brothers did get sexual assault, sexual violations into evidence, and this letter now appears. And the letter doesn't actually say that they were sexually abused. It does talk very bad about their father, there's no doubt, calls him crazy and everything, but they never actually say they were sexually abused.
Joe, excellent points. Thank you for all of that. I'm in agreement with you. Let's say, for the sake of our analysis, though, let's just say that they are released. Dr. Jamie, are they a danger to society?
I think that if they do not, like I said, continuously are involved in regimented treatment and tracked and followed and really just look at the rest of their life as just constantly having to work on this abuse and trauma that they've endured, I think that they're at risk for making poor decisions. Yeah, I do.
Dr. Jamie, thank you for that. And thank you for your time this morning. I know we have to say goodbye to you again. Follow Dr. Jamie Zuckerman, Dr. Z, on social media, expert in narcissistic abuse and practicing psychologist. Thank you kindly. Joe Tamburino's coming with us. We want you to do the same, please. Still to come here on Opening Statements. Here's what we've got.
She told me that she was going to go with him to Quick Trip, which was a normal thing. I mean, they would always go somewhere. They would go eat or they would go to the appointments. But for some reason, before she left, I had kind of a bad feeling.
That's Mia Campos' brother, Alexis. He is joining us live this morning with his parents. Mia's mom and dad were spotlighting her death, the death of her unborn baby, and the brand new charges brought against her accused killer. Plus, a major setback for Bryan Kohberger's defense as the court rules the DNA evidence stays in. Welcome back. This morning, we're giving a voice to victims as we're remembering 16-year-old Mia Campos. She was allegedly killed by her so-called boyfriend, but now he's facing some brand new charges and is back in jail. Campos was found dead near her home in Gwinnett County, Georgia. This is in the greater Atlanta area. She was 7 months pregnant at the time and looking forward to being a mom. The father of her baby, Jesus Monroy, was quickly arrested and charged with her murder. But he was released on a very low bond, $56,000. And this was much to the disgust of her family and her friends. But now he's facing some brand new charges of statutory rape, child molestation, and enticing a child for indecent purposes. And this has landed him right back in the jail. And Mia's family is hoping that he will stay there. They're joining me now. I'm so pleased to have them back on the show. Mia's father, Edward, her mother, Miriam, and her brother, Alexis. Wonderful to speak to you all again. When you were last here, Edward, I remember you were saying we're hoping and we're praying that he gets charged with statutory rape because of the age difference between him and Mia. He should never have been intimately involved with her because he was too old by law. Tell us what your reaction was when you got the news of his charging.
Well, I got a phone call that day that he's supposed to be arrested that night, and because they didn't tell us and they told me what was the charge, I was hoping because that was what I was fighting 6 months ago because they didn't put that charge. And as soon as I knew that charge is going to be, it has to be back in jail, and I was happy because I feel like now justice coming.
Right, right. Oh, it sure is. I remember telling you, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. They're going to charge him. Keep the faith, you know, and you did. You've been keeping Mia's memory alive, advocating for her. And now look, so now he's back behind bars. Previously, for anybody who has followed this case, you may remember this. If you haven't, this was so stunning that the defense was asking for something like $75,000 bond on the homicide charges, and the judge went lower. The judge went to $56,000, which was so shocking. He made that bond. That had to have felt awful. Miriam, what did that feel like when the court deviated and went even lower than what the defense team would have thought would have been appropriate for Mr. Monroy?
They don't like the judge decision because the bond is too much low for two murders.
Right.
My daughter and my grandson, so I'm very upset.
Right. You said grandson, so Mia was pregnant with a little boy.
Yeah.
And she had a name picked out, didn't she?
Sebastian.
Sebastian. Oh my gosh, Sebastian. How far along, Mia? She was 7 months, right? 7 months at the time of her death.
Months.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, little Sebastian. Look at this picture. Oh. Oh my goodness. And she was so excited about being a mom too. Alexis, you know, tell us what that was like when you would talk to your sister about what her life was about to change drastically in the very best way with the baby. What would she share with you?
She would just share that she was very nervous at first. She was very scared. I mean, we were all very scared. We were all very shocked and surprised. I was angry when I found out, but over time I started seeing her stomach grow. And I have nephews, I have nieces, but I never experienced the growth of the stomach. And honestly, it was an experience. I was very happy. She was very scared and nervous, but I told her over time, it's gonna get better. She's gonna be a great mom because she was a great sister and daughter and grandchild, but she was just a very great person. And she was very nervous, but she was ready. She was ready to take on the new challenges that were going to come with it.
Right. Let's go back to something, please, Alexis. You said it made you angry when you first heard the news. You knew Jesus Monroy, right? Was he somewhat of a friend? Would that be fair to say, or more of an acquaintance or someone you kind of knew from school?
I would say more an acquaintance from school because we were on a big friend group around sophomore year. But like I said before, I've always kept my distance because I knew what type of person he was. I never really trusted him. So that was one of the reasons why I was pretty angry on why she was pregnant.
Yeah. What was it about him that made you feel that he might have been untrustworthy?
Just the type of person that he is, a liar, a manipulator, somewhat of a verbal abuser from what I've heard. So I wasn't very happy about it. But I mean, she was still my little sister, so I had to support her. It got harder, but over time, I trusted him up until now with everything going on. That was just all thrown out the window.
Right. So sorry. And you never thought, even though maybe you didn't care for him or trust him, Edward, let me go back to you. You never really thought he was a danger to Mia, did you? Right? There was nothing that ever would have raised a red flag with this guy that, oh my gosh, he might put her in harm's way.
Right, because I mean, I didn't know the guy. I mean, I met him only like a couple of times when we went to talk to his parents about Mia, and that's when I met him. But really, I talked to him only like twice, and over the 7 months, I didn't see him, you know, because the way I worked, and I didn't see at the house, or he didn't by to the house or anything like that. So really that was no communication between me and him, and it was just only Mia, but he didn't come around at all.
You know, and if he didn't want the responsibility of being a father, with your family, you're all such a beautiful, loving, close family. That would have been okay, wouldn't it have been? You would have helped Mia raising Sebastian, and Sebastian would have been just fine. It wasn't like Mia was trying to force him into her life, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, he didn't need, most likely she didn't need anything from him. I mean, because she got all the supports 100%. And when I found out, at first I was angry too, but then it took me like 10 seconds to realize, oh, my daughter's pregnant. And I was like, I was so happy because I want to be, you know, a grandfather again.
Right.
And I was waiting, but I mean, the way everything happens, I mean, like I said, I didn't know the guy at all. You know, and for him to do that, I mean, I don't think he, you know, my daughter, she deserved that.
She deserved the very best in life. She was an angel. Everything I've heard about her, just such a loving, beautiful, sweet, smart, bright human being. And she deserved to be loved and respected and to be safe. And, you know, that night, that dreadful night that he came to the house, is it your understanding, Alexis, that Jesus Monroy may have lured Mia away with the idea of, hey, we'll go get a bite to eat, no big deal, oh, you might be hungry, you know, you're pregnant, my goodness, you know, let's go get a snack and visit. Is that kind of your understanding of how he got with her the evening she disappeared?
I would say yes, 100%, because I know my sister, and even before she was pregnant, she always had late night cravings. She would always wake me up saying, let's go get something to eat, or let's go stop by the gas station because I want something. So that was a tactic that he used to lure her, most definitely.
We have footage of Mia, the last footage of her seen alive. Let's look at this together now as this is going to become a big piece of the case evidence. And you can tell just as you see beautiful Mia walking away, you know, she's planning to come back home. She's got the cute little pajama pants on. Right. It's late at night, you know, she's in her comfy clothes and fully expecting to come back. I can't imagine how caught off guard she would be. But she was also so smart. Once she must have sensed the danger. Alexis, let me go to you on this. She did something with her phone, did she not, to essentially leave behind some evidence?
So what she did was she screen recorded messages between her and Jesus after Jesus said, meet me here, I'll come pick you up this time, delete these messages. So that, for her, that was a big red flag. So she screen recorded everything, which was very perfect and smart on her end.
So smart.
And it's helped out a lot.
So smart. Because initially he denied having any idea where she was, but then eventually he did, should I even use the word help, find her. Is that right, Edward?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, because when we found her, I mean, we had a 360 application, and that's the way we found her. But I mean, like I said the other day, you know, everybody's on guard because, I mean, we didn't know.
Right.
I mean, we trust him because, I mean, he was the father of the son. And I mean, when he told Alexis that, hey, I'm gonna go to a quick trip with Jesus, I mean, but who's gonna tell that, you know, he was busy to do something like that?
Right.
But like I say, I'm still in shock. I mean, it's been only, you know, 7 months.
Not even a year.
And not even a year, and I mean, it still hurts. I mean, it still hurts because all these holidays, I mean, we spend the time to the cemetery. You know, her birthday, my wife's birthday, Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving. I mean, it was not the same for us. You know, so he took her life and he took my life with her too, because it still hurts.
I'm sure it does. Unimaginable pain, unspeakable pain. You know, all of us here at Court TV are so sorry for what you've gone through and are so impressed with the way that you've come together to advocate for her in such a beautiful way. We're seeing it today with your necklaces. I'm noticing you all have these beautiful necklaces on with Mia's picture in the middle to remember her. Next court hearing is going to be April the 2nd. You will all be there and arguing for no bond for this guy, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm fighting for. That's what I'm hoping that this time, you know, we get the justice that she deserves.
Right.
And I know it's going to be April the 2nd, and I need to find out exactly the time because that's 2 different times. Yeah. So I need to find out what exactly time is going to be. But I know it's going to be April the 2nd.
April 2nd.
And
we'll be there.
Yes, I'm keep fighting. I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm gonna keep fighting in court. You know, hopefully these times they can be the justice that she deserves for for her and Sebastian, because I mean he was already 7 months.
Right.
You know, he was already a full baby.
He was right.
Beautiful baby.
Yes, and you had a beautiful daughter. She's your angel now, as is little Sebastian. Edward, Miriam, Alexis, thank you so much. We're going to continue the conversation with you as this case progresses. We are not going to ever forget about Mia Campos. Let's remember Mia right now as we head to break and her unborn baby, Sebastian. Mia had so much life ahead of her. She would have been a mother by this point in time. Let's hope that she and her son get justice. We'll be right back.
When you go into a trial, you try to eliminate surprises.
Did he ever use the N-word?
Yes, he did.
That was a surprise. The goal was to get him to lie.
Have you used that word?
Not that I recall, no.
Anywhere that he was involved was tarnished.
I was heard uttering the N-word 40 times. How do you pull that back? You don't.
Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win? A Court TV original series. New episode Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back. Now for what's tipping the scales of justice in the Idaho student murders case. The judge overseeing the case against Bryan Kohberger has ruled that key DNA evidence will be allowed in at trial. The lawyers representing Mr. Kohberger sought to suppress the DNA evidence that they say directly links him to the crime scene. Remember his touch DNA, right? DNA from his skin cells on the snap on that knife sheath found in the bedroom where Maddie and Kaylee were slaughtered. That's right. Let's talk about the victims. Madison Mogan, Xander Kernodle, Kaylee Gonsalves, and Ethan Chapin. These are the 4 beautiful victims who deserved to live. So what's Kohberger going to do now? His trial is scheduled for August. The DNA is coming in. His DNA on that knife sheath that held that big, giant K-bar knife. Let's talk about it. I want to bring back in crime scene reconstruction expert and the owner of Dr. Kenny Kinsey Associates, Dr. Kenny Kinsey, and criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Joe Tamburino. All right, let's unpack how this is going to affect the trial. Dr. Kinsey, the defense was really hanging its hat on the idea that, my goodness, there's some other man's DNA inside the house on a railing, someone else's in a glove outside of the house, and then, oh yeah, we got the DNA of Kohberger on the knife sheath, no big deal. We need to keep this out and focus on who these other suspects are. What do you think of that when you hear the idea that they're trying to point the finger at other people for this?
Well, it's normal, Miss Julie. What else can you do? When you're talking about, you got to remember, DNA is very dependable when it's not contaminated. And the questions I would ask myself, and I believe it's in particular 3 different samples, that seems a little too convenient for me. Was it placed there intentionally? You know, certainly this defendant would have the knowledge to do that if he had attended any bloodstain pattern analysis classes. We do it all the time. Or do we have a situation where we may have multiple killers, or is this left over from another incident? You can't age DNA, you can't age blood. So it's a win, certainly for the prosecution, but there's plenty of room for a defense attorney to get in there and challenge the evidence. And remember, they don't challenge generally the DNA and the science itself. You've got to challenge the human factor. And I would assume that there's probably some investigators at this point in time trying to answer some of those questions that I just raised.
Oh, I'm sure. You got me thinking, Dr. Kinsey. Joe, let me ask you, please, how concerned do you think the prosecution should be about the other male DNA samples?
I wouldn't be that concerned, and here's why. Well, first of all, the judge's ruling was correct. And Julie, you and I talked about this, I think, about a month or so ago. The judge decided correctly that Kohberger did not have an expectation of privacy in these genealogy databases. And of course, there was no expectation of privacy in the search of the garbage in Pennsylvania. I mean, the judge made the right rulings. And you've got his DNA on the knife sheath. Now, of course, there's going to be other people's DNA in that house. This was a college house. I mean, remember in college, if you went to my college place when I was quite younger, you're going to see DNA from tons of people because these are young people. They're coming in and out, they're having parties, they're hanging out. Of course, you're going to find that. But having it on the knife sheath, that is powerful evidence. And really, the only thing the defense is going to have left is if they could structure some type of argument that this was a transference of DNA, that actually Kohberger's DNA wasn't there on the knife to begin with. Somehow it was transferred, his DNA, to the sheath.
Ooh, that's interesting, Joe. The transfer of the skin cells somehow there. Dr. Kenny Kinsey, eyebrows up, but we've got like 10 seconds. Could that happen? Could that be a possibility?
It's always possible. As I said, DNA is it's great when it's used correctly. Contamination is always an issue.
I wish we had more time. We're going to talk about this again. Joe's coming with us. Dr. Kenny Kinsey, what a treat it was to have you on Opening Statements today. I know we got to let you go, but thank you for your time and your expertise. We'll see you soon.